Welcome back to the Goonery. Myself and Brandon here. We got some college football news, Chicago Bears talk, and of course, some wrestling to wrap up the show, as always, with some Chris Jericho discussion. Who doesn't love talking Chris Jericho these days? But first and foremost, before we get into these things, Brandon, how you doing? Good to be back.
I'm good. I'm doing better. I mean, last week was a very tumultuous sports week for me, solely for the Cardinals. So things are looking up. Don't want to jinx anything, but I'm doing much better. How are you doing?
Well, Tony La Russa is still in the dugout for the White Sox, so things don't look to be going up from there. Right as we hit record on this, Eloy Jimenez, after coming back from the IL and tearing his hamstring for the Sox, just limped off the field and went back into the training room because he caught a fly ball. Literally ran under a fly ball and pulled up on his hammy and now is out of the game. So we'll see. He's made of glass. The Sox, today is June or July 13th, and I am canceling the season for the White Sox. They're done. They're not making the playoffs. You can old takes expose me. I don't care, but I'm on to football season.
And you know what? If you do indeed get old takes exposed, are you going to be upset about it?
No, absolutely not. But, it just, you watch, for example, the Blue Jays, I believe, are four games over 500 right now. They're the second wild card team playing in the best division in baseball, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And they can Charlie Montoyo today. And it's just like, you look at that, you look at the run that the Phillies went on after firing Girardi. Obviously, the same didn't happen with the Angels and firing Joe Madden. But something's got to change. I don't know. I'm hoping that quietly over the All-Star break, La Russa decides to retire and the Sox just roll in, kind of get things situated heading into 2023. Probably not, but that's enough baseball talk because I'll just keep going on and on. I wanted to start out with what's been some of the most interesting news, I would say, in a while is USC and UCLA, as of next year, will be members of the Big Ten Conference. I don't know if that's for all sports, but I think that just goes to show that the college athletics that we all know and love, it's dead. It's dead and gone. And TV contracts are going to run the world.
Well, I'm going to tell y'all now, and I want to tell those that are college football freaks like I am that still play NCAA 14 and it ranges from playing NCAA football 07, and the guys that will go on YouTube, look up hype videos from my respective Michigan Wolverines and look up old college football memories, because not for nothing, I think the highlights that live in full glory are college football highlights, the old ones. But hold on to those for dear life, because the landscape of college in general is completely shifted. It's like, going from the whole NIL thing, which, by the way, I was one of the biggest backers for the NIL, but now just a freaking wild, wild west where everybody transferring and whatnot. And it's kind of a, crazy thing for me to go back on it. And granted, I'm not going fully back on it because I do think athletes should be paid, but there should be regulations at hand for it. But with this news with USC and UCLA, I understand that sports is always going to be an evolving thing. It evolves in every sport, maybe not baseball for more reasons than not, but that's another story for another day. But sports in general will always evolve. And part of that evolution would be, expansion teams move to the division, teams move to conferences and stuff like that. I mean, one of the most recent big moves was the Astros going from the National League to the American League, and that no one really batted an eye. But like now, you look at college, USC and UCLA. When you think about those teams, they are synonymous with the Pac-10, Pac-12, and think about this: you're going to have two California teams that have to travel. I mean, God knows how long
I don't know.
Go to New Jersey to play Rutgers. And let me tell you something. I went to LA for my birthday this year. That was the most debilitating flight of my entire life, because it felt like the flight was never going to end. It felt like the plane, I might as well just make a bet on the plane. That's how long the flight takes. So I can imagine for the players.
So I don't know if you saw this, but I saw a stat that said USC The distance from USC to Rutgers is longer than Rutgers to the capital of Iceland.
Oh my Lord.
I mean, the thing that I just don't understand with this move, I get that USC and UCLA are two of the biggest brands in college athletics, and the Big Ten is going to benefit financially from it. But I just don't see how this is feasible for non-revenue sports. How are you going to have your women's gymnastic team or your men's swimming team or tennis or any of these non-revenue sports flying from California to New Jersey to Maryland to Michigan, Minnesota, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois? Like it doesn't make any sense except for football and basketball, unless they're going to be bringing that much money where it doesn't matter. And I don't know if it becomes a thing where these non-revenue sports are under some different governing body and football and basketball are under a different governing body. And I think that's the direction things are kind of heading in. And I don't have a problem with that because it doesn't make sense. They're completely different games. They're different beasts.
And the thing is, we've always knew that the biggest cash cows are always the one that's going to have the bigger advantages, and that you can see that with the NIL. The big teams are the ones that can afford to throw anything at a play to say, "Hey, come play for us. You'll get this, that, and the third." So, for those that are non-revenue sports, I would like to think, even though this is the NCAA, where just the perfect example of just not knowing how to govern their own sports or whatever is the NIL. They didn't really have no plans in place other than players getting paid. Now with this, if the non-funding sports is going to get screwed out of it, I guarantee you something, they're not going to care, because at the end of the day, it's about what makes the money. Football, basketball, hockey to a lesser extent, and golf to a lesser extent. Those are the ones that are going to make money. So those are the ones they're really going to worry about. As bad as it is, that's the reality.
And it's a very interesting reality because it's moved a lot faster than I think we kind of all anticipated with how rapidly it's shifting. I think the NIL has gone a lot differently than people kind of expected. Didn't expect to be seeing 4-star quarterback recruits getting $10 million to go to the U. I mean, I can't imagine how much a guy like Arch Manning is getting to go to Texas that hasn't been announced yet. The last kid who needs the money at that recruitment stage, but I guarantee you he's making 10, 15, $20 million a year to go play at UT. And then you just look at these lower level athletes, the non-revenue guys. Yeah, they can get endorsements, but what value does that really provide to people? And I would not be surprised to see the NCAA just absorb all of the non-revenue sports, and then you have football and basketball and whatever other. I think those are the really only two big cash cows, but they're going to end up being like, I don't know, maybe it would be like the Nike League or the Gatorade League or something, whoever the big, like it's going to end up being branded leagues, and you're going to go. Big 10 is going to be gone. SEC is going to be gone. Big 12 is going to be gone. ACC is going to be gone. And it's all going to come down to sponsorships, and it's going to be really weird to get used to. And I don't know how long it'll take, but I don't know. It's interesting just to see how rapidly things are changing. And a year from now, how different things are probably going to be. I mean, the Big 10 a year from now, I mean, it's likely Notre Dame will probably be in the Big 10 if we're being honest. Most of the rivals are in there. You're probably going to see potentially a couple of these Big 12 schools, maybe some of the other Pac-12 schools. You don't know. You could see ACC schools. I know I read into it a little bit. The ACC is kind of screwed with their TV contract situation. They're like contracted into something through 2036, and they're all kind of fucked because they can't make any more money than they're making right now. So they're seeing all these other conferences continue to make more and more money. But if you have schools like Clemson, Duke, North Carolina, Miami, Florida State, if they just say, yeah, we're done, what are they going to do? Honestly, I know it's a contract, but these universities hold all the power at the end of the day.
You know what? That was going to be my next point. There's going to be super conferences. Now, how do you balance the super conferences is going to be the real issue. And not for nothing, if I'm a fan of, like, I'm a Michigan fan. You know, we just won the Big Ten this year, and that was kind of, you know, out of nowhere. It was completely out of nowhere, considering the 2020 season that we had. Let's say if you are a fan of Clemson, Miami, Notre Dame, or LSU, that's going to be the worst thing possible, because you're going to have to go through all of the big teams in order to win that super conference. Now, granted, I see it being split up into divisions, and I know they're going to play, like, they're definitely going to fit the rivals in whichever division and whatnot, which how it should be. But I just want to know how, because basketball, can you even make a super conference in basketball? Because not for nothing, they kind of do have like the division format with the conferences, but how are they going to do this? Because I'm not going to lie to you. I'm saying how are they going to do this? Because I know it's going to happen. It's going to, because the conferences that they're going to have with the Big Ten, it's not the Big Ten, the Big 12 and the Pac-12. You mean to tell me the teams that's in those conferences right now is going to bring in any money after USC, UCLA leaves, and Texas and Oklahoma? Come on now, it's going to happen.
I mean, what's going to happen? I think those two conferences are just going to end up merging. I mean, end of the day, I think that's what's going to happen. I think they'll end up adding some schools, some smaller schools for both football and basketball. I think we're going to see Gonzaga join that conference. I wouldn't be surprised to see a St. Mary's join that conference. Just some of those West Coast powerhouses, and they kind of do, like, I don't know what they would call it. I guess they could call it the Big Pack or Pack, whatever they want to fucking call it.
They could call it the Big West, but that's unfortunate that's changed. Yeah. I think that'd have been the
been the perfect one. But like, you'll have the Eastern, the West and the Eastern conferences in that, and the dividing line can be, I don't know, Utah, Colorado, one of those states, and you just go from there. And it's going to end up looking like the Eastern and Western Conference and the NBA and the AFC and the NFC and the NFL for college football, college sports. And I don't know what to think of it. The rivalry games are still going to get played, but at the end of the day, are they going to feel the same? I think that's the question most people are asking, and they're not going to feel the same, I don't think. But at the end of the day, fans are still going to go to the games. They're still going to pay money to drink beer. They're still going to pay money to eat the food in the stadium, to buy the gear. It's just going to be different. I mean, you didn't, like, when Nebraska, Rutgers, and Maryland joined the Big Ten, I was like, what the hell is this? And then after a year, you're like, oh yeah, they're in the Big Ten. And
sometimes you forget Nebraska's even in the Big Ten because it's still relevant.
I know. And it's just an interesting and odd situation, I think, because the legal team with the NCAA right now, their brains just have to be complete mush trying to figure this all out. And I get that's their job, but I would not want to be doing that right now.
No, hell no. I'd quit my job if I was put in charge of that. Because how do you make it balanced? There's no possible way to make it balanced. Literally no possible way.
And I was reading an article that Andy Staples, I think he's a college football guy. He was just saying that end of the day, all these people who are going to be joining these conferences, it's going to come down to what TV markets these conferences aren't in. So the biggest schools right now that people want are North Carolina and North Carolina State and Virginia, because the Big Ten and SEC, neither of them have a school in Virginia, neither have a school in North Carolina. You get those Big Ten network subscriptions in a whole state. You get the SEC network subscriptions in a whole state, and that's millions and millions of dollars that you're just adding. Because, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I think it's inevitable that North Carolina joins the Big Ten, if we're being completely honest. And I think it's because North Carolina values basketball more. And I think the Big Ten is a better basketball conference. And I think academic-wise, I think North Carolina lines more up with what the Big Ten has going on than the SEC. And people like to say that doesn't matter. But if you look at the academic prestige of Big Ten universities versus the SEC universities, it's pretty clear which which conference values that a little bit more, I think.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even have to include within their athletic departments because, I mean, for being honest, no football player or basketball player really at this point with NIL has to care about it because,
Yeah.
I
Unless
mean,
they really want to.
yeah. But I'm just, I know I kind of mentioned this to you earlier, but I think for our next episode, we should have some type of draft. We can figure out how many teams and we break down how we would build our super conference based on, I guess you could say, football program prestige, because I mean, although I don't think USC is a top 5-6 program, they're going in those first 5 or 6 picks just because of name brand recognition and how much money.
1,000%.
And I hate Notre Dame, but guess what? They're top 3 easy. And it's just very interesting in my opinion because it's just going to look so different. It's going to look very, very different. So we'll circle back on that next week. But something else that I kind of wanted to move on towards is you sent me a Bleacher Report article earlier today regarding our Chicago Bears. And it kind of more or less said that the Bears are going to flirt with a winless season and they're going to win 1 game. It's just completely preposterous. I understand there's not a lot of talent on that team, like at all. There's not. But they won 6 games last year with Matt Nagy at the helm and just more or less handcuffing Justin Fields, fucking up his development, having guys who just didn't want to be there. And I said this to you earlier when I texted you. It just seems like for the first time in God knows how long, there's a direction that the front office is building towards with the offseason additions. Nothing's been crazy flashy, but you could see what they're trying to build.
So I'm gonna lay out what Bleacher Report mailed in on. I'm gonna break it down. They talked about Justin Fields' weapons. Okay, let's talk about Justin Fields' weapons. They have Darnell Mooney that in a very bad offense was borderline elite last year. They brought in new guys, whether, if you want to laugh at Equanimeous St. Brown, sure, go ahead. If you want to laugh at Dante Pettis, sure, go ahead. If you want to laugh at Tajay Sharp, go ahead. If you want to laugh at N'Keal Harry, who's now a bust for the Patriots, if we're being completely honest, go right ahead. Before I go into why the whole weapons thing is not a legitimate argument, let's look at something here, because one thing that the media is going to do every single year is make the Packers the darlings, because Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback. Completely understandable. He's their quarterback. He makes guys better. Completely get it. But if you're going to tell me that Justin Fields could be half as good as Aaron Rodgers, I guarantee you that wide receiver core he has is going to be miles away better than the one the Packers have at this moment in time. Because let's look at it. We have a number 1 on the Bears, that's Darnell Mooney. We have a number 1 for the Green Bay Packers, that's Sammy Watkins, an over-the-hill Sammy Watkins. I'm telling you now, if any Packer fan is going to try to sell me on Sammy Watkins being a number 1 at this point of his career, I'm convinced that you need to go to rehab because something is not right. You're on drugs. And then you have Christian Watson, you have Velus Jones. Now, I want to say something that's going to be pretty controversial. Outside of the hype that they get and a high fantasy draft pick, every rookie is on common ground. I don't care what anybody says. Until you get in the league and do something, you are just another rookie. So keep that in mind. So people will say, oh, Christian Watson got drafted in the 2nd round. Velus Jones got drafted in the 3rd round. So that must mean Christian Watson is better. Until they get on the field, you cannot make that assumption that Christian Watson is going to be better than Velus Jones. You can't do it because Velus Jones can end up being better than the guys who got taken in the 1st round. Same thing with Christian Watson. So you really can't make that distinction. So let's go through the offensive line. Now, Joe Burrow had an awful offensive line. He's still and he took that team to a Super Bowl with that bad offensive line, by the way. who's to say that a quarterback that is mobile can't work his way around a bad offensive line? You got to keep in mind, the system that was in place was nobody was going to succeed in that offense. Not Justin Fields, not Andy Dalton, not Nick Foles. Defensively, they said we took a step back. By the way, the defense, the real issue with the defense was the secondary. You got Jaquan Brisker.
Mm-hmm.
They got Kyler Gordon. They got Dan Cruikshank that's better than anything that any other safety outside of Eddie Jackson can do. Tavon Young. And Thomas Graham is actually going to get an opportunity. Oh, by the way, and they said our defensive line is not very good. I'm sorry, Khalil Mack was even there to contribute as much as he should have. So if we're going to go off of that, a healthy, younger defense, they might be hungrier. Who knows? We don't know that. That's the problem.
And we don't know what the Eberflus defensive system is going to look like with this talent.
No clue.
And yes, you have an idea of what it's going to look like because of what he did with the Colts. And that was a pretty freaking good defense, if you ask me. And I don't know about you, but I think Darius Leonard and Roquan Smith kind of play a similar game.
Yes, they do.
And I'm excited to see Bro flying around the field, man. And if this team was to completely, I mean, they kind of have completely blown it up, but if you're starting a defense with any young player in the NFL, if Roquan Smith isn't in the first 10 of those defensive players at this point, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. Oh, he doesn't make Pro Bowls. We talked about it on the last episode. Any type of all-star game, Pro Bowl, fan voting is absurd. Roquan Smith, I'm so excited to see him honestly with a scheme that fits him better. And then you mentioned him, but I am so excited to watch Brisker.
Man.
Dude, I've watched enough of his college games, and it's not very often that you kind of you don't necessarily pay a lot of attention to defensive backs when you're watching a college football game, in my opinion.
But you always heard his name called.
Yes.
You always heard his name called.
That's exactly where I was going with that, because you only find out those guys' names when they get burned more often than not.
Yep.
And obviously it's a little different with the safety, but watching his highlight tapes, oh my God. I mean, Bears fans are going to love him.
Listen, he's going to be that guy we've been looking for. Because I feel like I see a little bit of Mike Brown and Eddie Jackson, just from the playmaking standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like we haven't had that Chris Harris type of safety in a very, very long time, or Major Wright when he was actually good. That's the safety we've been looking for. And we didn't have that in Deshaun Gibson. We didn't have that in Adrian Amos. But I also want to touch on something else, because I saw a lot of people laugh at the N'Keal Harry trade, saying, "Oh, the Bears get another weapon. Oh, they got a bust and they're all happy." I want to ask you, and I want Patriot fans to ask themselves this question. Now, it's one thing I know about Patriot fans. There's some of the most disingenuous fans that you'll ever meet, but that goes along with the trend with every Boston fan in general. What Patriots receiver have the Patriots developed outside of Julian Edelman? I will wait. I mean, I'll continue to wait.
There literally isn't any. You go through the names of guys who they drafted who you thought could be someone. I mean, N'Keal Harry, he still very well can be someone.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Dobson, I thought he was going to be good. He had a good first year with the Patriots, and he just completely fell off the face of the earth. I heard a stat that out of wide receivers that Bill Belichick has drafted, I think in the last 15 years, there has been one who has had over 100 career receptions on the Patriots. One. And he wasn't even drafted to be a wide receiver. He was a seventh round special teams flyer who played quarterback in college. And that says more about Julian Edelman than anything.
Exactly. And you know what? I think a lot of people are going to scoff at that, because how dare me, a Bears fan, talk about Bill Belichick and what he's done and how many players he's developed over his years. Listen, it's okay to say that Bill Belichick has one bad thing on his resume. He doesn't develop wide receivers well. That's just the facts.
And I think at this point, Patriot fans would admit it, because you really don't think Patriot fans are looking forward to the draft every year, because Belichick's either trading back or
reaching.
Yeah, and a lot of those times those reaches pay off, if we're being honest. I remember, I think it was 2011 or 2012 in the first round. I'll never forget, not McShay, Mel Kiper Jr. just going just like his jaw dropping when Belichick traded up into the first round and drafted Devin McCourty, who had like a 4th round grade out of Rutgers, and he's still an all-pro on the Patriots.
Yep.
And I mean, Belichick knows what he's doing aside from wide receivers, and if that's your one blind spot, hey, that's okay. The Super Bowl ring speak for himself. And
but
it's just, I love the Harry trade. A 7th round pick for a 1st round talent, if we're being completely honest, because you go back and watch his tape at Arizona State.
Oh my gosh.
Dominated.
Oh,
dominated.
Man.
He I don't want to sound like an idiot, but there were some of his highlight tape reminds you of Randy Moss from when he was at Arizona State.
By the way, when he came out of college, you know who his pro comp was? Allen Robinson. And listen, I'm not by any stretch of the imagination say he's going to be Allen Robinson. But if he can be, I want to see more than half than what Allen Robinson was, there's not anybody that's going to tell me that was a bad deal to make. Besides, trading a guy who got drafted in the 1st round, no matter what his production was, you can't tell me that his production will outweigh whatever play that we would have drafted 7th in 2024.
Yep.
Come on, man. I don't care if the guy's been a bust. I genuinely do not care. There are people who genuinely need a change of scenery. And it's best that it came now rather than him going into free agency, trying to get a new contract and trying to fight for a position in camp. This is a perfect place for him to kill Harry.
Yeah, because, I mean, freaking Harry has been asking for a trade out of New England since after his rookie year. It's been it's very public that he didn't like playing there. And, hey, he's going to end up surprising some people, I think. And I would not be surprised if he was 2nd on the Bears in receiving yards.
And you know what's funny? The funniest thing about this is Velus Jones was that guy that Ryan Poles was looking for. Now imagine you combine that with Darnell Mooney, who's already borderline elite. Imagine they get that type of production out of N'Keal Harry. You telling me that those 3 guys can't make noise with Cole Kmet if he actually decides to catch footballs this year? I mean, come on. I think it's blasphemous that the Bears will be the worst team in football. I think it's blasphemous that they will fit with a winless season. I think it's blasphemous that they will only win 1 game. And this is, and I feel like this is an issue that people just forget that just because you have a bad roster doesn't mean that you're going to be competitive enough to win games. Look at the Lions last year. The Lions were a sorry-ass football team, and all they needed to make was a couple of more plays, and they win those games. And you mean to tell me the Bears can't finish the games the Lions can't finish? They're cursed. Of course they can't finish, but we can. That's the difference.
God.
But the national media has been lying about the Bears this entire offseason, and it's an agenda that they have whenever they don't make the moves that they want them to make. Yep. That's all it boils down to.
And do you want to know what my favorite thing about this N'Keal Harry trade? You had sent me this. The Bears acquired the 2 highest rated run blocking wide receivers in the NFL last year in N'Keal Harry and Byron Pringle. If that doesn't show you that they're trying to build an offensive identity, at least in my opinion, that shows me that David Montgomery is going to be getting 25 touches a game, and I am A-okay with that.
Hell yeah. You got Khalil Herbert, who, when he came in behind that offensive line and that system and how he was playing, That tandem's gonna be nasty, man.
Oh,
And the funny thing is too, I know Valens Jones gonna get them carries. He's gonna play that role that Cordell Patterson
yep,
should have played for the Bears when
yep.
he was on the team.
So I need your opinion on this. I had a friend, I think last week, make a comparison saying that he doesn't understand. He's a Bear fan. Let me preface this. He is a Bear
Okay.
fan. It's not going to sound like he's a Bear fan when I say this, but he said that David Montgomery is just as overhyped and as talented as Jordan Howard was, and he's going to have a downfall just like Jordan Howard sooner than later.
Okay.
He also said that Khalil Herbert is better than David Montgomery.
Okay. So when you say things like that,
I
you
laughed
gotta
in his face. I laughed directly in his face.
when you say things like that, first of all, add context. Because if you're gonna say that Khalil Herbert is better than David Montgomery, let's say Khalil Herbert is a better fit in this system than David Montgomery. Let's say that. But to say that he's going to have a drop off like Jordan Howard is absolutely ridiculous. Listen, I get where the sentiment is coming from, just from the standpoint that they are similar backs. They're power backs, and honestly, that's not the trend of the NFL anymore. Like the trend of the power back, that's dead. But with David Montgomery, all you need in a running back is the guy that's going to fight for extra yards. And if anyone wants to find more than that, then they're being greedy. I'm not saying that you should be grateful or you just take what you have, even if it's the most average thing possible, because truth be told, I don't think David Montgomery is average. If I think it was an issue because his stats don't reflect it. Let's be honest, because if he was in a coherent system, he'll rush over 1,000 yards and well over 1,000 yards. So I understand that. I understand the sentiment, but I think it's ridiculous to compare the two. Completely ridiculous. They're completely like they're similar runners,
Yeah.
but the difference in talent is there.
No, yeah, for sure. So to kind of circle back to where this came from with that article saying the Bears are going to flirt with a winless season, predicting them to win one game. Realistically, how many wins do you see them getting? I see them in that 6 to 8 win at the ceiling range, in my opinion, this year.
I would say 4 to 6 is their range. I if they get over 6, I mean, with the money that we're gonna have, I think the NFL should be scared shitless of the Bears next season.
And it just all I care about this year is seeing Justin Fields take a step or two forward. I mean,
All I care about.
that's all any Bear fan should care about at this point.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I know you're not in the city, but being in Chicago, I have not heard a single person say a bad thing about Justin Fields. And it seems like this is the most the city has kind of rallied behind one athlete, in my opinion, at least, since Derrick Rose. And I think Justin Fields is going to reach those levels in this city. And I just hope he takes a step forward this next year before people turn on him, because he got fucked last year. End of the day, he got fucked by his situation. And I'm treating this like his rookie year, as bad as that sounds. And
No,
I know we said the same thing with Mitch when he went with Fox to Nagy, but it's just, I think it's a completely different situation. Justin Fields is a much better, more talented quarterback than Mitch Trubisky too. And I'm excited that if they can win one game, but as long as Justin Fields looks good, I'll be okay. Because that one, it's higher draft pick, and the amount of cap room that they have come the next offseason, if Fields takes those steps forward, people are going to want to come play here. And that's all that matters.
and let's be honest about something. When Mitchell Trubisky got drafted, he got booed.
Yeah.
And it wasn't any fault of his own. He was just he was the wrong pick.
Yep.
And even after the fact, you had Trubisky showing up to the Bulls game. He got booed. And now with Justin Fields felt like the right guy for this team. And I think when you see a guy that felt so defeated after his very first start in the NFL. That's where he becomes a sympathetic character.
Mm-hmm.
He becomes a sympathetic figure because they see it. But like, you had Nick Foles on the sideline during that Browns game saying this offense ain't working. And it was the trend throughout the entire fucking game. And still to this day, it bothers me that I feel like that set the tone for his entire season. He just felt shell-shocked after that. And I'm glad that stench is gone from Matt Nagy. And I think it's reflected in the fact that when Fields had his season-ending message, he didn't include his head coach. He didn't include him. And I don't think that was by accident either.
Nope. So positive thoughts heading into the Bears season from this show, at least. I don't know about the rest of Bear fans, but I feel like both of us are kind of on the same page that we know what to expect and we know what we want to see. And I think we're going to see what we want to see. So with that being said, to kind of wrap up the show, we're going to move into some wrestling talk per usual. Not as fun wrestling talk this week, if we're being completely honest, but kind of let you take the keys here. But just to preface it, it's regarding some comments Chris Jericho made on a podcast talking about Vince McMahon. With that being said, Brandon, take the lead.
Now, I need you to help me out here. Do you have the exact quote? Because I don't have it with me at this moment in time.
I will pull it up 1 second because it was essentially that Vince is just like a guy's guy. Is what it came down to from what I can remember regarding the whole situation that apparently, like, I think it was $16 million more were paid out by Vince McMahon in hush money and NDAs. And it's just, I shouldn't say I'm surprised with all this coming out with Vince McMahon, but the fact that people are defending him who don't even work for him at this point, it kind of blows my mind.
You know something?
Here we go. I got the quote.
Okay.
I mean, is there really a surprise in any industry when it happens? And really, when you look at it, it's not illegal. He had an affair, paid the lady off to not say anything, and move on. People want to jump on it, and there's always an undertone of it's wrestling. If you look, that story came out with a bang, then you really haven't heard anything about it since. If this was, Hollywood with Harvey Weinstein, that sort of thing. But the difference between that was he was holding women back from getting gigs. Harvey Weinstein, either bang me or you don't get the starring role. And then he said, this has never been said in the Vince's thing. It was a mutual acknowledgement of the affair. And then he paid the lady to not say anything and they took the money. So, I know Vince and it sucks that it happens and it sucks that he did it. But is anything really going to happen from it? I really don't think so.
You want to talk about an enabler of just foul behavior? That's what it sounds like. Chris Jericho is an enabler. But at this point, do I expect anything less from Chris Jericho? Absolutely not. So one thing about me, I've always got looked at funny when I said Chris Jericho is one of my favorite wrestlers of all time.
Oh, me too.
He's not that guy. He's not like a superstar like the likes of the Rock or Stone Cold, Undertaker, Triple H, guys like that. But Chris Jericho is always, to me, a guy that I feel like they could have strapped the rocket on way more often than they did. But I cannot tell you a time that a guy like him has gotten out of my good graces so fast and in a hurry. The comments that Chris Jericho has been making over the past couple of years in terms of being a demo god and his tweet on election just being an absolute fucking idiot, saying that he didn't know that an election could go past 12 o'clock when he's in his big ass age. He didn't know that. That's bullshit. But just how much of a loser he has become is really disheartening. But this particular comment it bothers me, and it's a deeper than just wrestling or him just being an asshole. Oftentimes, there are guys that ask, why do women pick their times of coming out with certain things their timing seems a little bit too convenient for whatever is going on in said person's life. But stuff like this, where not for nothing, we have seen it resurface that Vince McMahon has been accused of rape. And let's just say that if this were to be the case, everybody would sit up there and say, well, why did they wait? Why did they wait? Are they just trying to get a cash grab? Are they just trying to get their name out there? It's the same shit with Deshaun Watson. There are people who are going to sit there and say, oh, well, he settled with 20 women. But guess what? There's 4 who's still seeking a lawsuit, by the way. Y'all want to know why women don't come out with shit like this? Because money and power is always going to rule at the end of the day. And you know what comes with the money and power? You have dick riders like these people. They're going to sit up there and defend him when they don't have any ties to Vince McMahon other than watching his product. Nothing. Yeah. And those same people are those same women that would get accused. I guarantee you. Y'all want to know why these names never get released? Because in social media nowadays, anybody can be found. Anybody. And imagine with how wrestling fans, how rabid they are. Mm-hmm. They will attack you over your favorite wrestler. Imagine if those names were released and how the vitriol, the nasty shit that would get sent their way, all because they want compensation for a traumatic experience in their life. And keep this in mind, y'all. These are the same men that will be on Facebook with 2 daughters as his profile picture. Familyed up, 2 daughters, 3 daughters, 4 daughters with his wife on Facebook taking pictures. Now, for those people, I want to know, how would you explain to your daughter, your wife, your comments? And see how different they look at you, and see if they have a father figure or a bitch as their father.
I mean, if we're being honest, I don't see the Jericho family looking at him any differently based on what we kind of know about them.
Definitely not.
And the thing that's kind of bugged me about this whole situation too is the fact that people kind of went back and based on like the timeline, they were able to draw conclusions as to who they think it was that came out and spoke. Like why?
It's irresponsible.
If their names weren't released, they weren't released for a reason.
Yes.
Keep it be, let it rest. They'll come out eventually if you really care that much about something you're not involved in. And it just it's insane. And the fact that Vince was sitting octagon side at the UFC event with Triple H, Pat McAfee, and Stephanie McMahon. I think it was this weekend or last weekend, and they showed him, and people went wild because they saw Vince, and people are still going wild when Vince is walking out to the ring on these shows now and making appearances on TV again, which blows my mind that it's able to even happen.
If Vince McMahon is your hero, that's a problem in of itself. And I want people to come to a conclusion that your heroes can absolutely be a villain in your eye. Keep in mind the stuff that you parade for, that you speak about, that you stand for in terms of your personal life, and apply to your heroes. Because sometimes they need to be held accountable. Actually, no, not even sometimes. All the time they need to be accountable. Because if they don't, they end up like Vince McMahon. And you know what Vince McMahon is? He's shameless because he can't be shamed for the stuff that he has done. You want to know why? Because he's done a lot of really, really foul things in his life. And you know who has checked him? Not a person. Not a person. So if y'all really want to make a statement, if y'all really want to get the rich white billionaire out of his position, you probably should hold him accountable, or else these things are going to continue to happen from going from generation to generation.
Yep. I think the internal landscape of the WWE is going to be looking a lot different 6 months to a year from now. Yep. And I don't want to say that I'm happy this is the way it's happening, because that's not something you ever want to see happen. But it's going to be refreshing. End of the day, that'll be refreshing. And I mean, if you're that much money, you're that old, why do you still want to be working to begin with? That's what I'm like. I'll never understand that. And I just don't know how you can fall asleep at night if you're Vince McMahon either. That's what I look at it and think too, just because the last month for him has been a nonstop flurry of allegations and stories coming out. And if we're being honest, no one's surprised by these allegations because he had Trish Stratus get on all fours in the ring and bark like a dog. How do you see that and not raise an eyebrow at it back then in the 90s, late 90s? And then, I'm not sure if you saw this either. Netflix canceled, I think it was a 7 or 8 part
Yep.
Vince McMahon documentary they were coming out with, and that's been canned. So I'm just happy at least some people are starting to hold him accountable. And I really, I don't know. It's a fucked up situation end of the day.
It's a fucked up situation, and it puts you in a really bad spot as a fan of the WWE because without really knowing it, when you watch, you're in a way supporting his product.
Yep.
And it's a nasty feeling. It really is. And it's just one of those things where, you know, you don't know what to think. You don't know how to feel because you would really want to enjoy what you've been enjoying since you basically came out the womb. But
Yep.
when these things happen, you just kind of feel dirty about supporting it. Man, and I think it's one of the sad things about it, because I'm a lifer with WWE. I think I'm always going to be a lifer with WWE. But they make it hard to be fans sometimes. And it has nothing to do with the product. There's nothing to do with the product itself. It's what goes on behind the scenes.
Yep. And we've talked about it on this show before, and it sucks that we continue to have to talk about it, whether it's talent relations or allegations such as these. It sucks. End of the day,
Yeah.
it sucks. And nothing's going to change until a certain family's out of power, and the internet's just going to keep dick riding another rich family who happens to own a wrestling company, and it's just going to be a constant comparison. And at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to.
By the way, if this is going to be a thing where AEW fans are going to hang on the rim, I think that is just as irresponsible as cheering on Vince McMahon.
Yep.
Just as irresponsible. Because at the end of the day, AEW fans are not coming from a place of wanting a better product.
Nope.
They're coming from a place of saying, oh, we're squeaky clean over here. We don't do that stuff over here. But in reality, it's just a hate for the product on their end. And that's the equivalency they're going to make. And it's sad, but that's what they do.
And I just kind of want to wrap up with this because AEW fans, and I like AEW. I like the AEW product. I dislike AEW fans.
Yep.
And I want to just wrap up the show with this. You know, if you think about the timeline of when this was going on, guess what? These self-righteous AEW fans, they were watching the WWE at this time, and they would have never known. They would have never known.
Exactly.
And that's what it comes down to. End of the day, they were watching it just like the rest of us, and you never know. And that's why it's a good thing that these people come out and say these things. So,
by the way, I would absolutely hate to be so miserable that I would hate watch something. Yeah, that is the biggest trait of a miserable person. Could it be me?
Yep. All right. So with that being said, it's a little bit of a somber note, but we're going to wrap up today's show. We will be back next week, and we will be talking, like we had mentioned, a little bit of college. We're going to do a little bit of a college football draft. We're going to iron out the kinks on that. Sure, we'll be talking baseball, just going over the first half for our teams, and probably more Bears talk. But until then, don't forget to like, share, subscribe to the show, and we will see you guys next time.